You may remember her face from her time as a host of the New Music. But that's just one stop in Denise Donlon's incredibly impressive career that has included stints as Vice President of MuchMusic, President of Sony Music Canada, and Head of CBC Radio. She chronicles her path through a shifting media and record industry landscape in her just-published memoir, Fearless as Possible, Under the Circumstances. Denise Donlon joins us now. I'm so excited.
So good to see you.
And of course I'm excited because you gave me my first job in media, but also because this book is so interesting.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
So you write about your expansive career in music and media, but you also write about your private life. And I'm thinking that means opening up on private and intimate parts of your life. How did you feel when you first started to write?
Well, when I first started to write, I learned not to lead with your ego, right? Because the publisher said, you should write a book. And I was like, of course I should write a book. And I thought, once I started writing, I thought, oh, I'll just, chronicle these hilarious rock star stories. And then, in case my son ever wants to read about what happened on the Whitesnake tour in 1984.
And a lot happened.
Yeah, a couple of things happened. That chapter's called The Feminist Compromise. But as I started to write, I started to think, well, who wants to know my rock star stories? And at the end of the day, I'm not Oprah or Lena Dunham or Aung San Suu Kyi or anything. So why am I actually writing? And so, the things that started to come up for me were really about using your powers for good and how to make a positive contribution and a positive impact on the planet if you can. And so that's kind of the narrative that started to weave itself through. So it became a memoir of some fun stories, and then it became a kind of a business book about what happened in the industry. And then it was really a reflective book for me as well. So a lot of all the way through it, yeah.
And were you worried about exposing any public figures?
Well, it's been lawyered. Yeah, no, of course. The book wasn't about, it's not a tell-all, I didn't actually care about those kind of stories. I cared about telling the stories that were inspiring to me by people who met that were inspiring. So, the artists that used their public platform to advance, causes like the environment or Mandela being in prison or, gender issues, those kind of things. So the book really started to have a life of its own. It started to build its own narrative. And at the end of the day, when I was feeling vengeful about something, I used to stick phrases on my computer. And the first one was, when I needed motivation, it said, the ass will not kick itself. And the second one was, kindness, kindness, kindness. And the third one was, faster, funnier, Donlon, when it was like twice as long as it needed to be. So.
You also write about your family. And growing up, your father would say, be a Donlon.
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Well, I think I've been influenced by both my mom and my dad. So my dad, and my parents were born around the same time, in the late 20s, both in England, my mom in Wales, my dad in Liverpool. And it was after the war, or after the first one. And, malnutrition and rickets in the mean streets of Liverpool. So he had a really tough upbringing. His family threw him out. And my mom, same thing. Her mother died suddenly when she was about 3 or 4. Nobody really knows how, murder, suicide. Her shoes were found, neatly placed side by side by the banks of the Rhoda River. And it was an impoverished Welsh mining town. So she grew up in a virtual girls' school, virtually as an orphan. So she would say to me, the world is your oyster, my dear, and encourage me to take advantage of every opportunity that she didn't have. And my dad was, he was a tough guy. And, when I was bullied as a kid, he taught me resilience. He taught me how to stand up for myself against all the bullies and the screamers and the yellers and the blowhards. And trust me, there's a lot of them in the entertainment business, at least at the time.
Well, been there. But as much as you lovingly write about your father, you were also very open about his angry outbursts. He called you a slovenly bitch and a clumsy clod. How did this affect you?
Well, it was tough. It made me try and be a pleaser, right? And it makes me hate confrontation. It makes me work harder, I think, because I think I'm still in some, there should be a couch I should lie down. There should be, like trying to overcome these ideas that you are a clumsy clod and a slovenly bitch. And so it was very motivating, I think, at the end of the day. And as I said, he taught me resilience.
And what would you say is the most important lesson your mother taught you?
To really take advantage of every opportunity. You know, my mom's still alive at 89, still going strong, and to take advantage of every opportunity and do the best you can in the world.
Now, we met at MuchMusic City TV.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and it was celebrated back then and even now for diversity, both on air and behind the scene. And that was over 30 years ago. And now diversity seems to be the word of the day. Why has it taken so long for others to understand its importance?
Well, it's key, I think. It's key to who we are as humans on this planet. You know, back in the day, and there still is, when TV broadcasters get their licenses, you know, they adhere or they espouse diversity, that they'll be reflective. But it's not putting diversity on camera, behind the camera, you know, trying to get some gender equality in there. It's not only the right thing to do, it makes great business sense. Not only at City TV, where Moses and Ron Waters and Sarah Crawford and ultimately me, you know, we were all about making sure that we were looking like the community that we served, right? And Toronto being, you know, the most multicultural city in the country, it's really important that people see themselves reflected on the air. At CBC, the same thing. You know, Metro Morning has been #1 for 84 books, I think. And it's because they put all of their programming through this diversity lens. So it's better programming at the end of the day. It makes better business sense because you can increase your audiences. And, you know, if you're looking to do the right thing, you know, happy multicultural diversity won't just happen because we wish it. We have to make it happen, and we have to work towards inclusivity.
And one thing I didn't know was that in some places it's mandated, but when you look at the screens, you might not realize that it's part of their license.
Right. Well, it's tough for some people to, you know, push that rock up a hill, but and sometimes you have to put quotas around it, or sometimes you can do it because it's the right thing to do. And City TV did that.
Now, you never expected to be on air.
No.
You were self-conscious about your lisp and your height.
When I'm on TV.
And it's bizarre because you encouraged me to be on air, and I was very self-conscious about my stutter. Why is mentoring women important to you?
Oh, it's really important, you know, because, I mean, mentoring everybody, but women in particular, because at the time, you know, the entertainment business, the broadcast, it was a very male-dominated world. And people need a leg up. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, even with you now, I mean, you did not want to go do that demo, and you certainly didn't want to do it again.
3 times, and then the 3rd time you said, you don't say no to your boss.
Exactly.
And that's when I did the reel.
And look at you now.
I know, thank you.
So much. Well, you know, it's not even a thank you to me. Yeah. It's that, you know, you would not have been the success you are had you not had that already there. So you need people around you to just go, you know, give it a whirl, try it, you can do it.
In the book, you mentioned that you've never experienced overt sexism at work, but you also mentioned how hard women in leadership have to work. Doesn't these two things seem at odds?
You know, I don't think I was cognizant of it, to be honest. I mean, I was struggling so hard just to be accepted, to, you know, do good work, that I'm pretty sure that when misogyny reared its head, I kind of deflected it, right? And didn't, you know, acknowledge it. And plus, I was 6 feet tall, so that kind of helped. But at the end of the day, I mean, I remember in the music business, I was the president of Sony Music Canada. I was the only female president of a country in our company. So I would go to these big meetings, and there would be, you know, France and Germany and Latin America and everybody around the table, but the only woman. So people would say, well, were you leaning in? I was leaning so far across the table, my feet were off the ground. And then they'd say, well, weren't there any mentors? And sure, there were very powerful women in New York, but it's a competitive business. And asking those ladies to mentor me would have been like asking them to help me tie my shoes. It just wasn't done. So
what did you do?
So I just worked harder, you know, and really struggled to figure out a new business, particularly a business under fire at the time with Sony, because I walked in at exactly the moment when, you know, the online downloading crisis happened to the industry. But I think they said of Ginger Rogers, right, that she did everything that Fred Astaire did, but she had to do it backwards and in high heels.
Amen.
I think it's still true. Luckily, we're up to the challenge. Yeah.
Well, I always found being a woman, I think sometimes even if you say it's an issue or if it's a problem, then it's like you're complaining. So you just don't have that conversation.
Yeah. But I think people are having that conversation more often, and I think women are feeling more and more empowered to be able to have that conversation, at least in sort of more modern workplaces, particularly in North America, we would hope. I mean, we've all traveled to places where women don't have that power. They are voiceless, and so those of us who do have those opportunities have to ensure that we're helping them find a voice for themselves as well.
And when reading your memoir, something that knocked me off my feet was that maybe because I hold you on this such a high regard.
Bring me down, baby. It's all good.
No, but when I was reading it and you were writing about the that you have felt the imposter syndrome, it's something that I feel all the time. But I was surprised that you felt it.
Oh,
tell me about the imposter. Really,
I still feel it's a pernicious
everything
little
that you've done.
Stalker. You can't get rid of it, and they're really powerful. When Maya Angelou and Tina Fey are admitting to having the imposter syndrome, and it doesn't really matter how many accolades you have, how many awards are on the mantle. It's always with you, telling you you're going to fail, and people are going to find out that you've just been faking it all along.
Is that what your imposter demon says?
That's what my imposter demon says, you know, and he likes to sneak up on you even when you're behind a podium, you know, thanking the Academy. And, you know, you can let him win, or you can just try harder, work harder, be better.
Do men feel this, or like, is this just something that women?
They're you know, Neil Gaiman, for example, has admitted to the imposter syndrome, and men are, and now when people have read the book, men that I know really well, very big, successful men will say, oh yeah, I have it too. It's like, really? But not so much as women, I think.
Has it ever stopped you from moving forward?
Maybe, yeah.
When do you think?
I don't know. I would have to really think about that, but I think if you are going full throttle, balls to the wall, and you really believe you can, you know, it's, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. There certainly may have been steps that I didn't take because I didn't think I could, but that's the constant dialogue in your head. You have to talk to yourself, you know, go for it.
And when you left MuchMusic, you went to Sony, and you went at a time when the industry was facing these huge challenges that nobody ever saw.
I walked in the door and the business went, hopefully no cause and effect there. Yeah.
But I was wondering, like, during that time, during that transition, did you ever regret leaving MuchMusic? Or even when you went to CBC and you had to deal with laying off people?
That's the only regret, right? Because it was amazing how much I would come to miss the growth, right? MuchMusic and Chum Television was growing at such an enormous rate at the time, right? We're getting digital channels, hands over fist. We were, you know, the local stations were growing across the country. But at the same time, you know, we were building those news channels with very few resources, and the magic of them, and the reason they could be born, you know, from Space to Bravo to Book TV, etc.
Even Sex TV.
Even Sex TV, movie television, was because there was a strong structure, foundation from which to grow the channels. But it was also tough because you kind of, you know, out of necessity comes creativity, and it was a shoestring over there, right? I know. Yep. We would be so jealous. We'd go out and see other broadcast outlets out doing an interview with 6 people.
MTV.
Sorry, what? Totally. And they'd have, you know, cameras and assistants and lighting, and we'd be there, you know, carrying our own camera half the time. So yeah, I missed the growth piece of it because both at Sony and then at CBC, I walked into situations that were about downsizing, about laying people off, about finding efficiencies, that lovely euphemism for
You have to let people go.
Telling people they don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
So that was hard.
And how difficult is it to be a leader when an industry is faltering?
Well, I think that's when you really need to show your leadership, right? Because it is tough to lay people off, and being able to have compassion for people, and to do the best you can by them, and to show that your employees that you've looked under every rock to find a solution. Because if you're letting some of your best people go, that's what you need to help push your business forward. So that's the time you have to show real leadership, and reinvention and innovation, and struggling to reinvent, especially in the music business, an industry that was under fire, is if you're looking at 3 of your employees and you do your breakfast meetings every quarter and you show them the numbers, they know what's going on. They know what's going on by the number of product they're touching as it's going out the door, that the numbers are falling. So when you have to let 1 in 3 go, how do you encourage the other 2 to keep doing their best and keep pushing that rock up the hill? That's when you need the leadership.
Now, shortly after you left CBC, revelations about Jian Ghomeshi rocked the country, and his assault allegations and subsequent trial caused you to revisit an assault you had experienced.
Yeah.
You wrote a note to friends and family showing support for women who were coming forward, and under the hashtag Been Raped Never Reported. Why did you do that?
Well, when the allegations surfaced, my husband couldn't figure out why I was taking it so hard. And it was because as details of these alleged allegations started to come up, it brought back my own incident fully. I remember it exactly. I remember it was in the front seat of a car. I remember the smell of the upholstery. And I never told. I didn't even tell my dad, who, would have been, he was a police officer, would have been hugely supportive. Because like many women, I thought it was my fault, right? Didn't want to cause any trouble. So, rape not reported, that was the Antonia Zerbesius hashtag that went up. Millions of women put their stories up on that site. And so I sent out a note to friends and family saying, here's what I know. I know that when I walked into CBC, it was a place that empowered women. Over 50% of the managers were women. There was, strong HR policies. You go in the bathroom, you could read a sign, are you overwhelmed, are you stressed, here's the number to call. So it felt like a very supportive environment. And yet, there was a young woman who didn't feel, she didn't talk to me. And granted, there were many layers between me and she. But she didn't come to me. And I thought I would have reacted like a mother bear, I'm sure. So I sent a note to my friends and family, 40 people, to just say, here's what I know. I wish all, sexual assault, I wish sisters, every strength and stamina on the journey, because it's hard enough not to tell. It's certainly a lot harder to press charges and go forward. And the notes I got back from women, good friends of mine who I've known for years, who told me their own stories of assault. One woman told me that she was raped. She didn't tell. The man went on to rape and murder another woman. So she was not only living with her own rape, she was living with the guilt that had she not, right? And then the trial. At the end of the day, when you see the numbers, there was a study done, I think her name was Holly Johnson at the University of Ottawa in 2012, that of 1,000 sexual assaults in Canada, only 3 are convicted. That's a fail, innocent till proven guilty. There has to be a large burden of proof because that's the way our system works, and that's the way we hope to find justice. But at the end of the day, if there's a silver line to all this, these high-profile cases, is that women will be less fearful about coming forward, and that all the stakeholders in the chain, from the police officers to the courts, will be more sensitized that there isn't a normal way to react to sexual assault. For me, it's like if we in North America can't get this piece right, how are we going to be able to stand up for women elsewhere in the world who have no voice at all? We must be. We must do better.
And in the book, you wrote that your husband didn't know and your mom didn't know. Do you ever think that if this hadn't come out, would you ever have told anybody about what happened to you?
No, I would have kept it all the time.
How do you feel now, being black and white and people talking to you about it?
Well, I think that, if I can't be brave about my own story, and I'm still not very brave in there, I don't go into a lot of detail about it, that, women have to speak up. We just have to, and we have to support each other.
I mean, I started to type been raped, never reported, and I never finished it. So.
Right.
You call work-life balance an extreme sport, which I love because it feels most of the time like, what? Yeah. Where am I? What time is it? What day is it? Why do you call it that?
Well, it is an extreme sport. I mean, I'm not sure I actually ever, got the gold medal in that extreme sport. Because I think, we're working flat out, most women who are working and also raising families and trying to be good partners or good daughters. And, we have to make choices. And sometimes we're going to make the right choices because I think you can achieve work-life balance over time, but I don't think you're ever in some sort of perpetual balance. And so we make these choices, and we have to forgive ourselves when we make choices that we later regret, or that we wish we had more time for that child or for that piece of our careers. You know what? It's going to be what it's going to be. As long as we can go in with the information we have and make the best choices we have under the circumstances, then power on, ladies.
What you once wrote in your journal when you were in your early teens, and you mentioned it a couple times throughout the memoir, and you write, I don't really know who I am or why.
Or why.
Do you now know?
I don't know for sure. What I do know, though, is, and this was helped in the process of writing the book, that I am most happy, most fulfilled when I've been able to find a way to use my powers for good, I guess. Sometimes they haven't been very big powers. Sometimes I've been in charge of sort of a big organization. And all the way through it, even at, MuchMusic, when we would do, HIV/AIDS awareness or election coverage to try and encourage young people to vote, or Pride Day even. I mean, that was a scary situation when we put the first, mainstream broadcaster into Pride Day in Toronto.
How was that?
Oh, it was. I
was there. But
yeah, you were totally there. Yeah. Absolutely. It was. It was only 20 years ago, and it was spurred on by Tim Taylor and Gregory Hewitt, who just caught me in the hall one day saying, here we were embracing the human rainbow at MuchMusic and hiring diversity and being, very, very progressive along those lines. He said, we should put a float in the Pride Day parade. And I was like, yeah, you're right, we should. And what happened was, and it was, I went to Dave and Sheila and we all pulled together and we said, yeah, we're going to do it. But the moment we actually said, Much comes out on air, then the calls came, and they were horrifying calls. People saying, are you the dyke that runs MuchMusic that's teaching our kids to be fags? Like horrible things, and they escalated. They were like, we know where you park your car. We know where your kid goes to school, and it rattled me. And I knew where Moses would stand on it because he'd launched Gay TV with Irshad Manji a year before. So I went to see Ron Waters, who, they own the station. There was more than MuchMusic beaming out of Queen Street. There was, and if there was going to be a bomb threat, he needed to know. And he was just incensed. He said, we've got your back. And I came down those stairs ready to take on those homophobic troglodytes with my bare hands. And the next day, we went down Yonge Street in this giddy, confetti-filled celebration.
It was a blast.
Wasn't it a blast?
It was great.
Oh,
yeah.
And you can't be. You have to do it because you have to find your strength, because otherwise the haters win. And that day, love won.
Is that when you're fearless as possible?
Yeah.
Under the circumstances?
One of the few times, absolutely.
And looking back, what would you say is one of your most proudest moments?
I think Pride Day was a very proud moment. For me, traveling to countries, I did a lot of work with War Child, doing documentaries in Sierra Leone and northern Uganda and the Thai-Burmese border. Being able to weave that kind of social conscious programming into MuchMusic, I think I'm really proud of. And you know, even at Sony, doing peace songs records and you know, supporting as best we could artists who spoke their minds. Sony was a great company that way, you know, from Bruce Springsteen to Rage Against the Machine to the Dixie Chicks. I mean, look what happened to the poor Dixie Chicks. Natalie Maine says, you know, we're ashamed to be from the same place as George W. Bush. They were flamed, literally. People were burning their CDs. They plummeted down the charts.
So much for free speech.
Well, exactly. But you know what? They persevered, and they put out a great documentary, that Shut Up and Sing documentary, and also wrote one of the best, you know, empowerment songs I've ever heard, Not Ready to Make Nice. If you ever want to jolt in the morning and think, you know, maybe I can't do it today, put that record on full blast.
I will.
Yeah.
Denise, thank you so much for being here.
Such a pleasure, Ma'am, again, and continued success to you. You're doing
too.
so great.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.